Welcome, everyone, to another session from socialstudies.com. We're delighted that you could be here this evening. I'm Pam Gothard, Professional Learning Director, and tonight we have with us Jessica Hayes. Jessica is a certified active classroom facilitator. She's also a frequent visitor on our webinars and one of our frequent writers for blogs. Jessica, it is always a pleasure to have you on, and I'm just going to turn it over to you now and let you go ahead and get started and tell us all about blended learning tonight.
Thank you, Pam. Like Pam said, my name is Jessica Hayes, and I am a certified active classroom trainer. So for today's webinar, we will be discussing blended learning. During this webinar, we will be talking about what exactly is blended learning, some benefits of this method, models of blended learning, how to transition your classroom into a blended learning environment, and we will also look at how to decide which activities to have your students do online versus in the classroom. To start with, let's discuss what blended learning is. There can be a lot of confusion as to what the definition is because of so many educational terms and approaches out there. The definition can get easily misunderstood. According to blendedlearning.org, blended learning is actually made up of three parts. First, it is any formal education program in which a student learns at least in part through online learning, in part in a brick-and-mortar location. Second, there is some element of student control over time, place, path, and/or pace. Third, what students learn online and at the brick-and-mortar location must provide an integrated learning experience. I believe the big part of this definition that sets it apart from other educational initiatives are the phrases online learning and student control. To be a blended learning environment, students need to do part of the learning from the internet. This does not mean that they complete a Google form or document, or that they watch a video clip in class. Instead, they must learn the content online. However, this online instruction must be student controlled. If not, it's not any different from online instruction in the classroom. So students must be able to control how they learn, such as the pacing, which is how fast or slow a student learns. But control can extend beyond pacing. It can cover the location, such as do they learn in a school or training center. It can also extend to the timing when a student learns, and the pathway, which is the applicable content to their career path. The last thing that is important to note about blended learning in regards to its definition is cohesive instruction. The blended approach to instruction must be done in a way that complements one another and not duplicate. In other words, the online and brick-and-mortar location learning should not provide the exact same content. Before we move into the different models and how to implement blended learning, here are some results from case studies of schools who used a blended learning approach in classrooms versus a traditional classroom setting. In the District of Columbia Public Schools, they have redesigned 17 schools to incorporate blended learning. Since the new implementation, the schools have recorded extensive and well-studied student gains in math and reading on district-wide assessments and the National Assessment of Educational Progress. Since implementing the blended program at Enlarged City School District in New York, students in the elementary schools have shown greater growth than students in traditional classrooms in the district in both reading and math, based on NWEA MAP scores. Hamilton County Community Unit School District 10 in Illinois reported an evaluation based on NWEA MAP scores showing students in grades using blended learning outperformed students in grades not using the program. In Spokane, Washington, the public schools implemented blended learning with the goal of increasing graduation rates in college and career readiness. Since its implementation, the district's graduation rate has increased from 60% in 2007 to 83% in 2014. These are just a few of the success stories of how traditional school districts improved after implementing a blended learning approach. This slide offers 3 other stories demonstrating the success from blended learning. There are many different models of blended learning that you can implement in your classroom. As you can see, there are 7 different models: the flipped classroom, station rotation, lab rotation, individual rotation, flex, a la carte, and enriched virtual. But I'm only going to touch on 2 of the more common models: the flipped classroom and station rotation. You may be incorporating blended learning already without even realizing it. Elementary teachers use this approach all the time in their classrooms. The station rotation could arguably be the easiest form to implement. In this learning environment, there can be multiple fixed stations. One station could be a teacher-led instruction, a second could be online learning, and a third could have collaborative student learning activities to supplement what they learned. Even though elementary teachers predominantly use this model, secondary teachers can incorporate it as well. Using online programs like Active Classroom makes creating and utilizing stations easier in the secondary classroom. The model that has been gaining a lot of attention has been the flipped classroom. With this model, classrooms flip the traditional classroom learning experience. At home, students learn content through the internet. Then, when they come to school, they have teacher-guided practices or projects. Notice that the students have half of their instruction in a brick-and-mortar location. The content they learn online is at their own pace. They have control over the time they learn. If they are viewing a teacher-created video, they can pause and rewind the video, giving them control over their learning. And then at school, the material they are learning is not the same as what they learned at home. There may be a review or discussion to determine that the students did the work at home, but the bulk of the location-based material is complementary or extension. My first journey into blended learning was last year, incorporating the flipped classroom model with my incoming 8th grade history class. And this was a particularly special mix of students because half of them were average to advanced learners, while the other half were low-level readers. I had one student with dyslexia. Also, a lot of them needed motivation to get their work completed. And I thought that utilizing the flipped classroom would promote ownership of learning, and it would allow them to take responsibility of their work and improve their study skills and turn them into continuous learners. My vision was that students would view a video that would teach a concept at least once a week. We would discuss what they learned, then do practices and supplemental activities during the week. And this all went fine for the first couple of units because it was a gradual release of responsibility to the students. However, it then fell apart for various reasons later into the year. And probably the biggest reason being momentum. My kids had lost momentum with it, and I lost momentum. I allowed myself to get bogged down by the work required to keep the flipped classroom going. I firmly believe that this would be a good model for this particular class. Now, I wouldn't really classify the majority of these students as go-getters, even though some were. And usually the most resistant students are the loudest. So I let that attitude and my exhaustion contribute to the death of the flipped classroom within the first year of inception. With the flipped classroom model, I believe that it can help solve one of the big problems that we as history teachers have. Do we teach an overview or surface framework of teaching to get more content in? Or do we dive deep into a particular topic? With the flipped classroom, I believe it actually creates more time for the teacher. At home or other location, students can gain an overview of a unit, a section, or topic you are teaching. Then in the classroom, the teacher can dive deeper into a topic for deeper retention. If you would like additional information about the other models, visit blendedlearning.org. This brings me to how to transition into a blended learning classroom environment. The Clayton Christensen Institute does a great job laying out 9 steps to create a blended environment. The first step should be pinpointing a goal to obtain or a problem to solve. In this way, your learning environment will have a focus. Like I stated earlier, when I started implementing the flipped classroom, I wanted my students to take ownership of learning and be able to learn at their own pace. I felt a good classroom shakeup could motivate them. Secondly, Having a supportive team to help design the model of learning is beneficial. I did not have a team, and it was just me on my own, and I felt that this also led to the downfall of the first implementation of the flipped classroom. I didn't have anybody to bounce ideas off of or to keep me motivated. Next, motivate students and parents. Get them on board to this new way of learning, but also motivate them throughout the learning process. Give students constructive and effective feedback in their learning, but also teach them how to give one another effective feedback. The fourth step is to reimagine your role as teacher. You are still a critical and beneficial role to the learning process. You are there to guide them, to answer their questions, and to steer student learning. Some people may think that this is just a way to slack off from teaching, but it's really completely the opposite. You may be planning more in the beginning, but those rich lessons will be able to carry over for years. Fifth, choose your technology. How do you want to transmit content to your students? Do you use a learning management system or a different program to house your content? Do you want to create your own videos or use other teacher-created content? These are important questions to consider when creating your plans. I decided I would use teacher-created videos through Edpuzzle. I would have students watch the videos on the site and answer questions as they go through the video. Next, think about how you can redesign your classroom. Or do you want to rearrange it at all? Redesigning it for more learning option spaces can be beneficial to the blended learning environment. You will also need to decide which model to implement: the flipped classroom model, station rotation, or another model. Then, create a culture of blended learning. Have students prioritize their learning, and when problems arise, resolve them in consistent ways. Finally, refine the process. When you first implement, there will be problems that arise. There will be new ideas that your team will come up with to improve the process. Take note of them, solve the problems, consult your team members, revise, and implement. Like I stated before, the flipped classroom is an easy way to add more time into your day because you can assign student videos and readings to complete at home. Then you could focus on topics more in depth in the classroom. When deciding which activities to assign for online learning versus in-class work, the options can seem endless and daunting if you let it. Luckily, Active Classroom has bundled high-quality activities in one place to help simplify the selection process. For me, I believe the best way is to first think about what you want your students to learn at home versus what you want to dig in at school. I believe having students gain an overview or a surface understanding of a topic at home is best, so they could come into school with some background and ready to dig in deeper into a topic. A video is a great way to share basics on a topic for students at home. They can also control their own learning this way by pausing and rewinding the video. Video activities from Active Classroom such as Timeline, Milestones in Diversity, Framework for Democracy, Turning Points in History, and The Unfinished Nation offer great overviews of an event in history, as well as offer questions for students to complete so you can check for comprehension. In the classroom, more hands-on learning offers greater understanding and retention in a student. Therefore, I like to choose the activities that are best completed with the guidance of a teacher. Some of my favorites from Active Classroom include Decision-Making in History, World History Activators, History's Mysteries, and History Unfolding. I also like to incorporate readings to foster comprehension and to work on reading skills. Power Basics is always a go-to as well. It's very easy reading and it allows students to really understand the more complex issues. Conquering Close Reading is another activity I choose when I want to work on strengthening reading skills within my students. There is a lot to know about blended learning and how to implement it, but I believe these points can help you keep focused as you start your journey into this new initiative. Instruction now needs to be blended. A portion of it needs to be housed online. Make sure the instruction you're giving in class and online is cohesive. They should complement one another. Do not give duplicated lessons. Students should have some control over their own learning. This promotes responsibility and ownership. Finally, before you begin, identify a goal you would like to achieve or a problem you believe needs to be solved, and work towards accomplishing the goal or fixing the problem. Form a team to help you through this process, or at least seek a mentor or partner teacher to help you bounce ideas off of. And be prepared with the activities you are implementing in class. It can be a lot and overwhelming at first, like anything new, but completely worth it when you see the results. For more information, please contact Pam Gothard, Professional Learning Director. Thank you.